This incredible journey in Japan continues in Kanazawa, really the perfect second stop to balance out the busy streets and the bright lights of Tokyo. What a welcome opportunity to slow down and discover a sense of inner peace in a calmer environment. And what better place to start out than one of the most significant gardens in Japan?
I'm currently in the Kenrokuen Garden, which is considered to be one of the 3 perfect gardens here in Japan. Beautiful in all seasons, even when the flowers aren't in bloom, and in this crazy humidity that's happening at this time of year. As an adult, one of the things I've really appreciated about Japanese influence is walking through Japanese gardens all over the world. One of the things that really stands out to me about them is the intentionality behind all of the curated elements within the environment, and knowing that in experiencing these gardens, they really enable a sense of mindfulness in your movement to really walk slowly, given their beauty and the curation of walking through the different paths. And the intentionality you find within Japanese gardens is something I really appreciate across Japanese culture in general. You can feel that they don't cut corners here. People take pride in what they do, from a bus driver to any worker that you meet to like somebody in the convenience store. And also the konbinis, the convenience stores are awesome. Really reflects the high quality food that you can find just about anywhere. But that's a whole sidebar. I've been enjoying the konbinis, that's for sure. Just getting some chicken gizzards because I'm a savage, but organ meat's very nutritious. But yeah, anyways, just the intentionality that you feel in every day. You just know that people really understand the role that they play in society and in bringing the collective good to one another and really working to support their culture. But it's interesting, say what you will about Japanese culture. I think there's a lot of positives and a lot of negatives, like with any culture. But it is interesting, being on this island, knowing that they really do have a very defined essence to the way that they go about their lives, and intentionality is something that really sticks out. I'm sure there's a lot of influences that have helped enable that. Probably Zen Buddhism over the last 1,000 years I know has been really prevalent here. But even in like their tea ceremonies, that it's methodical. There's a step-by-step process that really brings you into the moment. And nowadays I think we can all use that, really just slowing down to be more ritualistic in some of the things that we do, so that we can really appreciate the small things rather than constantly seeking things outside of ourselves. And it's funny, I'm recording this on my phone, but our phones specifically, they make it easy to be pulled in so many different directions rather than sometimes, appreciating what's right in front of you. It's already absolutely serene here as is, but I can only imagine how breathtaking it is here when the colors are changing in the spring or the fall. That's honestly one of the reasons that I hope that I will return to Japan, not just once, but multiple times in the future. There's so many interesting things about the culture here. The sense of exoticism is real. There's just so many little nuances to appreciate, but that's a whole rabbit hole I won't dive into now. But all that to say that I would love to come back here when the colors are changing in the spring with the cherry blossoms, or in the fall when all of these gardens have, beautiful colors in the sakura trees. I can only imagine. I've seen pictures and videos and everything is illuminated in color. It seems pretty breathtaking, especially knowing that even as is, it's already one of the most beautiful gardens I've ever been to. So I've been walking around the Utatsuyama Park. Oh my goodness. After going to the Overlook Hill, and there's a temple up here that I walk up to. And as I'm walking up, there's these massive cobwebs everywhere with huge spiders. I haven't taken any videos of them because they're frankly quite frightening. But right next to this temple, there's this massive bamboo garden. This is so cool. I was about to, oh my goodness. I have to admit that I do have some reaction to insects, especially big spiders. You have to be extra mindful walking around here to not run into the webs because they're pretty low as well. Imagine maybe at the time of year, maybe a lot of people don't come up here. I don't know. But regardless, this bamboo forest is really cool. I'm about to go to Kyoto and there's the Arashiyama, something like that, bamboo forest that I'm really excited to go to. But I know it gets really busy, so it's just cool opportunity to be around a bunch of bamboo and feel immersed, especially with all the spiders. I'm such a baby. Oh man, just don't want one to like end up in my shirt. That would be a good story though. So maybe, yeah, I'm not gonna manifest that. But regardless, it's cool. I'm still sweating quite intensely. Oh my goodness, there's another one. But it's really peaceful. I only saw a few other people up here, probably just because it's so humid and people have more sense than me to be walking around right now. But yeah, look at this bamboo forest. Oh man, Japan. This place is awesome. Even with the spiders. Bro, these spiders are crazy. I'm literally crouching to make sure I don't accidentally run into cobwebs. I refuse to record any of them. They're huge. Bro, especially being by myself. Actually, I'm not by myself. I have the company of all these beautiful spiders. God, I wish I could appreciate them more. I do appreciate them. They are cool. Just the way they move. They're so fast, and the big legs and the cobwebs. Just the uncertainty of knowing that you could run into them. It's a pretty unsettling feeling. But the right side, there's a bunch of bamboo around me, so that's a win.
One of my favorite spots in Kanazawa was actually the DT Suzuki Museum, which, if you're unfamiliar with Suzuki, he was critical in helping to spread Zen Buddhism to the West throughout the 1900s. Now, I personally don't practice Zen Buddhism specifically, but one thing that stands out from the teachings is this idea of equanimity, which for me describes non-judgmental awareness and acceptance of the internal and external reality surrounding us at any given moment. Now, you might be thinking, what does that even mean? And why is this so important for anyone to think about, regardless of background, in my opinion? Well, there are limitless layers to potentially unpack here, so I'll try to keep my personal views as simple as possible. I believe by practicing a sense of equanimity, we work to better accept and move in synchrony with our external and internal reality rather than fight it. And let's face it, life is hard and there will always be ups and downs to go through. And this is something I've tried to accept, especially as I travel, even when I'm surrounded by spiders, But yeah, by practicing mindfulness, we can better understand reality rather than orient towards hiding from it. For example, by getting caught up in the notifications and algorithms in our smartphones. Ultimately, in seeking presence, we can work to become more aware and therefore intentional about how we curate our life experience from the inside out, and by understanding ourselves, the world, and how we want to shift our mindset and actions accordingly. Now, doing so is far, far, far from easy, but that's why it's a practice, and honestly, why mindfulness is so important for me personally in my daily life, and why I've tried to use this time I have traveling in this space to foster a sense of mindfulness, to ultimately be more aware, intentional, and to find inner peace.
This is amazing. So I'm walking down the street right now lined with shops and restaurants, and they're playing calm, atmospheric lo-fi music to set a nice serene vibe. I don't know if I've ever experienced something similar, at least in recent memory. I mean, I probably have, I'm just not recalling, but right now the street's pretty quiet and it's creating such nice energy. I'm really appreciating it. For me, experiencing such a new culture as you experience here in Japan, as a Westerner coming in and seeing the contrast, it's so easy to romanticize the differences. And I do really appreciate, like I mentioned, the intentionality and the respect that you see in a lot of the culture. But I do want to say that, every culture has its pros and cons, and no culture is perfect. And I think the beauty in travel, though, is not necessarily to, glorify one culture, whether it's Japanese or Mexican or Italian, whatever it might be. I think the goal is not to necessarily put a specific culture on the pedestal, but to learn from one another and to hopefully take things and integrate them into our own ways of being, so that we can have the agency to live as we want and not necessarily always fall completely into cultural norms. And I don't think falling into cultural norms is necessarily a bad thing, because it can be a helpful way to connect in some ways, but it's at a certain point, right? You have to balance, connection with others in that way culturally, while also having the decision-making proactively on your own end to how you want to integrate your own way of living and express that. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I just appreciate so much about travel is seeing different ways of life and then trying to learn from it, so that I can try to ultimately live more intentionally myself. At least on the surface, in terms of how well it's run, Japan often feels like one of the most modern cities I've ever visited, especially technologically and logistically. Like in Tokyo, the public transport system's amazing. Everything is clean. There's no trash on the streets. People are really polite. There's a lot of beautiful screens. It's just a very stimulating environment. But with that, it's interesting for me personally, having visited a lot of different places, some modern, some not modern. Typically, I've experienced much more English speaking in a variety of countries, at least in the more developed countries, that is. But even then, there's some English to get by, whereas here, there's very little English speaking. So Google Translate has made a huge difference just to be able to communicate very basic things. But with that being said, a few basic Japanese phrases go such a long way, I think, just in terms of showing respect, because respect is such a big thing here. People are so polite externally. And I think just showing that you're putting in some effort, and trust me, for me, even just learning a few basic phrases like arigato gozaimasu, like thank you very much, was very difficult. So I had to write it down and practice it quite a bit to really get it right. Or even just basic things like excuse me, like sumimasen, or thank you for the meal, like gochi sosama deshita. That one was pretty hard to learn. Anyways, all that to say that it was disorienting to adjust to the language barrier over my first week here, but it's just interesting given that, like, for example, in Europe, even in a lot of Eastern Europe or in the Baltics that I visited recently, there's quite a bit of English speaking, so it's a much different form of travel for sure. Now, just to end with a few words on Kanazawa in general, I've really appreciated the narrow, beautiful streets here. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of beautiful neighborhoods to walk through. I was staying in the Samurai district, which had very narrow streets, is beautiful, not as quite as touristy. And then Higashi Chaya, the geisha tea district, it was definitely more touristy and busier, but very beautiful, and a lot of cool tea houses and little shops to explore. One of my personal favorite places in Kanazawa was the Omicho market, and the fresh seafood there was just on another level. I am guilty of over consuming sashimi and sushi. I've definitely capped out on raw fish for at least a few days before I head to my next stop. I think there's probably a balance where less is more when it comes to eating raw fish, but it's so tender, it just melts in your mouth. It's incredible. So Omicho Market was second, and just in general, it's a really good vibe. I will say it's been really hot here in the beginning of September this year, and which has made it pretty tiring to walk around. But in general, for me, I'm still adjusting to Japan, so I've been spending time working and journaling and kind of figuring things out. I will say that's something I'm not used to in my travels, is traveling flexibly. So at this point, I only have my next stop booked out, and I've been trying to be dynamic and flexible, and it is so disorienting. It's really unsettling for me, somebody that loves structure and to plan and to have all that organized. And it's a good challenge for me because I'm trying to find the balance of doing the research I need to do and understanding my options while maintaining that flexibility. It is a gift ultimately to have this, and I'm trying to remind myself that I did this on purpose. Like, I sold all my belongings so that I could do this, but it's not easy. It's definitely an adjustment. It's funny how we cling on to stability, how it's a constant pull. But anyways, I'm a little bit all over the place, but I wanted to share a little bit about my experience too, of just traveling flexibly and just orienting, because I've only been in Japan for a week, and it's been a journey, just processing all the stimulation, first in Tokyo, which is such a bustling, dense, beautiful city with so much to see, and it's so exotic for somebody that's never been to East Asia, and so stimulating. And then coming to Kanazawa, which has a nice contrast. It's a little bit slower here. It's a nice balance of urban environment with a lot of green spaces and mountains in the background. So it's been a nice second stop for me, and I'm just grateful for the journey. I'm really excited and looking forward for whatever lies ahead in the journey to come. So with that being said, I really, really, truly appreciate you watching, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully talk soon. Peace.